Okay, the Golden State Warriors are NBA champions for the fourth time in 8 seasons. Rugby New York are headed to the final of Major League Rugby, and we've got a very special guest on this episode of Third and Five. All right, welcome into the show. Simon Hampton here, James Thwaites coming to us from somewhere in Colorado. It might even be Denver, I think. The back of a car nonetheless, and Dave Rice also in Brooklyn at the moment. Gents, how are we?
I'm well, mate. I been a little creepy at the moment. I'm recording this from the back of a car. So I'm parked outside a house in a suburban street, and I'm waiting for the police to turn up at any moment and ask me what the hell I'm doing here. And you know what? I'll just tell them, get on board. I'm recording Third and Five. Get some new likes and subscribes.
great for the content. Straight on the socials.
But I would like to say, I've gone on a road trip across the country. I have made the effort to join the pod. Dave, you were absent last week. What were you doing? What was I giving you shit about?
I don't feel like there could be any good excuse for this.
Yeah, so I'm able to join this week after the absence last week when I was in hospital supporting my wife giving birth. So I feel like that's probably as good as an excuse you can have. Didn't trust the Wi-Fi or even just the data reception in the hospital. So I didn't even try and attempt it. And in fact, I guess having my mind preoccupied, I even forgot, which was a shame missing the Michael Campbell interview, but good to be back today.
The fact that you even contemplated recording the podcast while your wife is giving birth is hilarious to me.
Well, no, I mean, I guess the point is, and it's not like there's labor, but there's long lulls, if you like, periods where there's,
here we go. I feel like you're going to piss off a large portion of our audience members by trying to write off and also mansplain childbirth.
No, but when someone says they're in labor for 30 hours, that doesn't mean they're in intense agony for 30 hours. Let's just say that. So there probably could have been a period where I did it, but I'm not. But we're here now. Thinking about the weekend, we spoke a few months or weeks back that we're kind of entering the period where it's going to be not a lot of sport on, but found ourselves on Sunday afternoon. I was making sure that my daughter's okay. It was a good excuse while it was sunny outside to be just inside, hold up watching the Formula One, the semi-final or the Eastern Conference final and the rugby. We had the US Open having its climax, and then there were Yankees playing in a pretty good game with the Blue Jays. So it was kind of, it was all happening. So there's still so many days out there.
Did one thing that I absolutely found pretty funny about the US Open, all the Livs players were terrible. I think Dustin Johnson was the best out of the bunch with +1. And now we've got another player jumping ship.
Brooks Koepka, who was the guy before the US Open that was teeing off on the media for asking about the Liv Golf tournament, and was saying that everyone's sick of tired of talking about it, and then
hilarious as well because his brother plays obviously in Liv Golf as well, from what I understand. So it's like, absolutely, it just felt like as soon as he got real defensive, you were like, I know it's about to happen.
Like Brooks Koepka and I'd put Bryson DeChambeau in the same sort of grouping here. Are sort of guys that I don't think they've ever been fans of the PGA. I think they've always had problems with the that PGA kind of own the sort of naming rights and all
but this is the thing that's getting really annoying with Liv Golf now. Everyone's saying they've got problems with the PGA Tour, and like I love Ricky Fowler, who came out and said like it's to do with like naming rights and stuff like that, and the player image and things like that. None of these other players have come out and said exactly what their problems are, like specifically. They're just saying I've got a problem with that, and they're using that as an excuse to jump ship.
Absolutely, but I think guy like Brooks, they're seeing it as a chance they can do this and still go for the majors. I think the quote from the weekend from Brooks was, he doesn't care about Liv Golf, he doesn't care about PGA Tour, he cares about majors. So like for him about having like a legacy, that's going to be what he focuses on, and he's going to see his way. But as you pointed out, the guys that are all playing Liv Golf didn't even get a look in on the majors at the US Open. So, and I'd expect that to kind of continue.
But what is their legacy when they walk away from all of this? It's going to be that they helped the Saudi League, Live Golf, try tear apart the PGA Tour. You know, originally I thought like maybe it adds something to the game, maybe a bit of competition is good, but the more and more I'm thinking about it, like it's just pure money grab, and that's what it is. It's not really adding anything to the sport. Saudi Arabia on the world stage has again been put under the spotlight, probably in a negative way, rightfully so.
I think what it will do, like PGA Tour can't afford to keep losing guys. Like I don't think they would have cared about your Mickelsons and as Ian Poulter, like the other guys that Kevin Na, like guys that were kind of like probably never going to be threatening sort of championships and aren't probably bringing sort of people into watching it. But now when you're putting in Bryson, Brooks, Dustin Johnson, like these guys are still kind of enough in their prime. I think that's going to at least shake up, and hopefully we see PGA Tour sort of change things up a little bit. I agree with you. I think Live Golf's not great, and I think it will probably not hang around.
All these guys,
forever,
though, like who, out of all of them, like from what I was looking at with the stats anyway, none of them are like competing at a constant level anyway over the last kind of year or two.
But that's Brooks. Who cares? No. Brooks and Bryson are right up. Yes, they're not in the best form right now, but they are like genuine. Like Brooks Koepka's won 4 or 6 majors. Like he hasn't had a great like last year or so, but that doesn't mean he's not like one of the top guys. He's just out of form.
I think he's had 2 top 10 finishes in the last 12 years. Last 12 plus months. Anyway, we could talk about golf forever. I think it's it's obviously all going to play out in front of.
He's a big name. He's a big name. Let's just end it there. Like that's a huge name to be going.
Huge name that's not performing well. Who gives a shit?
Is he and DeChambeau, are those the two that have that like rivalry where they hate each other, but they're sort of both in on it?
Yeah.
Is that the two? Yeah.
Well, so the PGA basically a few years ago they announced a pool of like say $30 million. They get split between the top 8 players, and not the top 8 ranked players. Top 8 players based on like social media clicks, blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden this rivalry, which obviously adds to the click. So it's a bit of a they probably were kind of in on it. They probably also hate each other as well.
Well thought out, a business decision to hate each other. But yeah, you're right. There's been a bit of sport on. That's been good, and one of the
NBA finals though, right? Like, just before we go into the rugby, NBA finals obviously finished up. Absolute dominance by the Golden State Warriors with an obviously very stacked team. Finished it off in Game 6 in Boston.
Halfway through that series, we were all on Boston, and not just on this podcast. It was pretty widespread that Boston were the favourites to go and take that, and it was quite a turnaround.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, we always get this, like, Jason Tatum is our generation's, like, new Kobe Bryant. No, he's not. Like, until he starts, like, stepping up and performing at an elite level, those conversations need to absolutely stop. Devin Booker, Jason Tatum, they both get compared to it. Like, the fact that Tatum didn't lead that, Tatum's not that guy yet. And that's kind of what came out of that series. Like, he's just not that guy yet for the Celtics. They've still got a way to go. They were.
I think he can be. He can be that guy though. He's definitely got
he's got potential to be that guy.
Yeah,
100%, but he's just not there yet. And I honestly thought he might have been there yet. Especially when they came up through the Eastern Conference and had that tough run. Klay Thompson though, do you know what's funny? Like, just the disrespect that Klay Thompson gets. And Draymond Green. And Draymond Green obviously like drives anyone nuts if he's playing your team, but God, I wish he was on the Nets.
Yeah, he'd be a handy addition. But we're going to talk a fair bit of basketball later on. But first of all, as we touched on before, the Eastern Conference Final of the Major League Rugby was won by Rugby New York over New England. 3 All Blacks involved, 3 ex-All Blacks involved in that. Nehe Milner-Skudder scoring a crucial try for New York. They're going to meet Seattle this weekend in the final of Major League Rugby, and Milner-Skudder has very kindly agreed to join us on 3rd and 5, and so let's roll the tape on that interview. All right, Nehe, thanks heaps for coming on 3rd and 5. We really appreciate it. Very honoured to have you on. Obviously, you've been in New York for a few weeks now, and you've got the big final coming up this week. you guys and the lads feeling ahead of the final?
Yeah, no, pleasure. Thanks for having me on the potty. To be honest, I haven't sort of watched too much of the content. But yeah, stoked to just see some Kiwi lads doing their thing over this way. And it's actually nice to hear sort of a familiar accent. And saying that, though, there are quite a few Kiwi boys in the New York setup. But the few Americans that get chirping, yeah, it does get a bit intense. But enjoying my time here. Yeah, obviously we've got the big final this weekend. Yeah, there's a good feeling amongst the group. I feel like we've sort of built quite nicely over the last few weeks. I think it was my first game here, had absolute shambles, got a hiding from Atlanta, so it wasn't a good start to my stint over here. But I think from then, yeah, we've had some good wins, more so the performances. I think the boys have been putting in some absolute shifts. I think got Atlanta down there last week, and then New England on the weekend just been. So yeah, we're sitting quite nicely going into this weekend. But I know Seattle will be an absolute beast. I think they've won the comp 2 times already. This is our first sort of run into playoffs and getting this far. So yeah, there's plenty to play for. But yeah, there's a lot of excitement, as you'd expect, heading into a big final. So I think we got one more training and then captain's run before the big one. So yeah, the boys are building pretty nicely.
Yeah, nice. And how did the opportunity arise? As you mentioned, there's a lot of Kiwi guys in the sort of squad. I know there's in management as well. Did someone sort of reach out? Is that connection that kind of brought you into the sort of fold mid-season?
Yeah, I was actually looking at coming over at the beginning of the season, I think in January. So I'd been in talks with Rick Solezzo, the GM of New York, and been talking to Andy Ellis, who I played with a couple of years ago. And he had just been raving about his time in New York, lifestyle. I think it's sort of a test to people saying it's the greatest city in the world. I'd say it's up there with Palmy back in NZ. But open to a bit of debate on that.
Close.
Yeah. Times Square and the square on Broadway Ave, for those who would be familiar with that. But so I was initially supposed to come over at the beginning of the year, but my wife gave birth to our first baby daughter, little Mila. She arrived middle of Jan, so it was right when I think the pre-season was finishing and the season was starting or thereabouts. And there was no chance I was missing that, and being away from the wife and our little baby coming into the world. So yeah, I ended up just sticking around in New Zealand, did a bit of pre-season with the Canes. We sort of month stint into the season, and then the opportunity popped up, I think, through injuries. Troy Lockyer, who had been killing it at the back for New York, had a freak sort of hammy injury. And so, yeah, that sort of just opened the doors. And I think Rick reached out again to see if I'd be keen, and managed to get the pass from the wife to come over and play the back end of the season. So yeah, it's been good, bro. That's sort of how it came about. Ideally, I would have came over earlier, but our family and our new queen, little princess, trumps it all.
And how's it being in New York and being away from the family? That must be tough with a young kid, so far away from where you are now. How do you separate that distance with the family and kind of missing them, with also like coming up with this final where you and the boys are obviously going to be out there trying to win the whole thing. How's that go?
Oh, bro, it is definitely, I've had a bad run of injuries and stuff like that over my career, and that's been tough, but being away from my family is by far the hardest. And I think even now I feel like I'm going to start choking up because I'm listening that much and just counting down. I'm a week from getting home. Just FaceTime, grateful for that, being able to talk to them pretty much after training. The time difference works out perfectly that I'll get home from training and they're just sort of getting up and get a lot of hours at night before I go to bed to talk to them, and then getting up in the morning, can wake up, they'll say good morning to me and I'll say good night to them. But yeah, it's hard, but at the same time, like, it just makes me more motivated to, you know, give this a good crack over here. It's sort of, you get a bit like, you know, whine a bit to the wife, saying, oh, I miss home and that, and she's like, well, yeah, there's no point having a sulk over there if, you know, you might as well come home. So it's an easy way to sort of put it and reflect on things. Bro, the other thing with coming over this late into the season, like, it's hard to try and experience all that like New York has to offer, to get out and you know, go look in Brooklyn and all the different parts of New York and sightseeing, because like, we're at that business end of the season, and so my total focus is pretty much just around trying to prepare and get myself humming for the weekend, so then I'm not like wasting this great opportunity to hopefully, you know, be a part of a championship winning side, but then, you know, do my family, my wife justice, who's doing the hard work at home, you know, bringing up a 5-month-old with all her family and stuff, supporting her. So yeah, there's plenty to play for, a lot to sort of juggle, and it's, yeah, to sum it up, bro, it's bloody tough. I can't wait to get home. It was kind of like, yeah, bittersweet winning on the weekend, because I was like, oh, awesome, we're in a final, but then it means I'm another week away from home. But yeah, the wife usually gives me a good reminder just to sort my stuff out and make sure my focus is where it needs to be.
Just touching on not being able to sort of get out and enjoy things, then be open to coming back next season for another go of full season, maybe bringing the family with you. I know Andy brought his family. Their kids are a little bit older, so it makes it a lot easier for them, but would you sort of consider that next season?
Yeah, bro, for sure. Yeah, that was, yeah, I won't be coming back unless my family's coming with me. Just trying to figure out, what next year looks like at this stage. I feel like it's still a little wee while away from here, but no, it's a given that they'll be coming over for, I don't think I'll last 5 days, let alone another 5 weeks being away. So yeah, that'll be awesome. And like you say, with Andy and his family, like, they've just flourished over here. There's a couple of other boys with their families and their little kids too. So it's great, I think, having that Kiwi connection. But there's also, you know, not just the Kiwi lads, or the rest of the boys, and quite a tight-knit culture here, which makes it awesome and quite welcoming for, you know, I know my wife and baby will love it if we get the opportunity to come back.
What have you made of the standard of Major League Rugby? Was it sort of more or less what you expected coming over, and sort of how would it compare to, you know, any standards back home maybe?
Yeah, bro, no, definitely up there. I think probably just the timing of the draw, how it's worked out, like with us playing Atlanta, like even DC, there's a lot of Kiwi boys in there. The Free Jacks, who, yeah, I think they'd lost couple of games throughout the season. So I'd watched a couple of games, like highlights here and there beforehand, and the level was, you know, right up there. And then for me, I guess my personal experience coming into like playoffs, yeah, the level, to compare it to back home, you know, I'd probably say it's right up there with some of the top, like Mt Rushmore, NPC, some of those tougher games, especially far out the game on the weekend against the Free Jacks. It was probably one of the quickest games I'd played. It was quite, awesome to be a part of, because they've got some guys like Bodie and Waka who have been running an absolute muck this year, and a great team who, you know, they want to throw the ball around and play that expressive, expansive game. Whereas, I know this week will be a little bit different. I know Seattle, they've got a good combination of some big forwards that can play that physical game up front, but then some pretty electric backs as well. But yeah, it's been good, bro. Like, the other thing is the amount of Kiwis that we've got here at New York, sort of to reconnect with them. And a lot of the times I played against, you know, the likes of Kara Pryor, Brendan O'Connor, even like Andy Ellis, and then there's a few good lads have recruited from Manawatu, which has made a massive difference too.
Seems like the rugby in the US is going through a big bit of growth. Obviously, the Rugby World Cup is here, and Simon will have to fact check me on the exact year that it is, but
2031, 2033 for the women, I think.
Yeah, it's obviously growing, which is awesome to see. The Major League Rugby is great. We were on the on Reddit checking out the Major League Rugby subreddit. There's a lot of passionate followers there, and lots of people coming out to the game on Saturday at Red Bull Arena. What are some of the things that you've noticed in the game over here that may be slightly different to the way that the game is played, in New Zealand or in Super Rugby?
Bro, straight off the bat, I think it was my first week here, we had a couple of boys that didn't quite make the NFL squads. Bro, and they're freaks. They're huge. And I'd kind of, thought about, NFL is pretty massive over there. I've watched their games and those guys are absolute specimens. So surely there'll be a couple that'll try their hand at Union. There's one fella, Asar, who was actually a winger. I reckon he would have made Sonny Bill look quite scrawny. And it sort of blew my mind, but immediately, from there I was like, the potential, all these athletes and the pool that they have to draw from is huge. But I think at the minute, a lot of them only come across the Union after they've missed sort of tryouts for NFL or college, so quite late in terms of their development. So I think creating some sort of programs or some pathways from a younger age will sort of help that development of rugby, especially, rather than waiting. But then at the same time, you've got these guys who have gone through all these high performing football programs through high school and college, and then they come over to Union. So it's probably trying to balance their knowledge, skill set of rugby with just the freakish athletic ability that they have. So there's plenty there to choose from and pick from and work with. And I guess it'll be pretty exciting, if I was to come back and help with some sort of youth programs or being a part of some development pathways to bring these guys through, and women too, with the World Cup in 2031, I think you say.
Yeah, speaking of
sorry, thanks.
Yeah. Speaking of NFL and kind of some of these American sports, are you into the NFL at all? Are there any American sports that you kind of watch? Do you have a team?
Nah, I'm one of those guys, especially I love watching it, but it's not until the playoffs. I'm not one of those, what do they call them, day one fans that support all the teams through and through. I love watching Odell Beckham. He's pretty razzly, does some freakish things on the football field. My wife's a big fan of him as well, so his name pops up quite a bit. But I was quite gutted I missed out on, the NFL season I think starts a little bit later in the year, so I wasn't able to get to the game. And then the Brooklyn Nets didn't quite kick on into playoffs to allow for games to still be here, which would have been cool to get to a basketball game. And the other one was trying to get to a baseball game. It's quite funny. Obviously, the American boys are quite passionate between the Mets and the Yankees. One of Connor Buckley, who he's quite passionate with the Mets. He's encouraging all the boys from overseas. So if they're going to go to a game, it's going to MetLife.
Yeah. Well, we're all Yankee fans, so definitely Yankee Stadium would be the one to go to. But no, you're absolutely right. That's what I thought of when the timing that you came. You just missed obviously missed the NFL season. I think the Super Bowl would have already been, and then as you said, unfortunately the Nets weren't quite able to kind of get into the second or third round of the playoffs. Just going back to what you mentioned, I know that last season, you kind of got into a bit of coaching, right? You were a player coach at the Mighty Turbos. Is that right? So
Yeah, bro. Yeah.
I guess coaching, is that something that I know you're still very much playing, but coaching, is that something that you're kind of thinking about as a life after rugby or after playing rugby? That's something that you'll get into, and obviously opportunities that might come about with that.
Yeah, sort of. I'd probably a self-proclaimed, and the wife will probably claim it as well. They're a bit of a code head. So I love like the analysis, the strategic tactics side of the game. I'm sort of one that'll love, reviewing trainings, preview teams that we're playing, trying to find little areas where we can exploit or just help improve our game, or my game especially as well. And so I think for me over the last few years, trying to just help coaches with the strategy side of the game. And then I guess being a little bit older, that sort of blends into a bit of a mentoring role for like young boys coming through, just helping them sort of show them little things that I do to prepare for the week. But yeah, I haven't kind of thought too far ahead around coaching. I do enjoy that, just helping people, trying to, improve myself, and hopefully that'll influence others to do the same. But yeah, I was lucky enough to sort of pick up that role last year with Manawatu, and then sort of helping the coaches here in New York as well. So it's quite cool.
Because I feel like that's kind of, obviously there are a lot of Kiwis, Australian, South African sort of expats in these teams, but if we're thinking about like growing the game nationally in US, and it's kind of getting the standard of the local players up, and having players like yourself, Andy Ellis, Matt Gateau in LA, like those sort of guys that have been around the traps and been able to pass on your knowledge, that would be huge for kind of lifting that or elevating, the American guys' skill levels and just like knowledge of the game as well.
Yeah, 100%, bro. Like I think it's got to, for the game to improve and grow here, it's got to come from both ends. So in terms of the playing, like the MLR comp, like, yeah, it's all well and good, getting X past the All Blacks to come and play and help in that regard. But you got to sort of, like you say, implement programs, systems at the grassroots. And whether that's, having guys stay over here for a little bit longer, or getting coaches to actually, do their stuff with the MLR season, but then hang around and put in some good, systems to help, I guess, the youth grow and develop as well. We're quite lucky. I'm not sure how it works at other clubs, but we have quite a lot of academy guys come in and train with us at Rugby New York. So it's awesome to be able to just get alongside them, whether it's, skills up in the gym, just chatting to them around, what we're doing in meetings, what we look for in preview, review sessions, doing, extra stuff with them after training. It's primo because they're just real excited. Like when you see guys that, are coming in just off their own back to train for about 4 or 5 hours, and they're more excited than, us. You just definitely feed off it, and all you want to do is help them, and that they're going to go back to their local clubs or the high schools that they've been at, or colleges, and sort of start spreading that info and helping. So it's awesome, bro.
Do you sense that there is an appetite in America to grow this game, and it doesn't need to compete with the NFL or those established big sports, but certainly carve out like its own identity and a platform that can be a viable sport in America?
Yeah, I reckon, bro. Like for me, I just immediately think of the numbers that drop away from like NFL. So if people's dreams and aspirations are to play NFL, there's, I don't know how many teams there are, but there isn't enough to cater for the amount that are actually pushing and wanting to pursue those dreams. And so that sort of physical aspect of that combat sport, they can definitely get that through rugby. And I think, what's awesome about sport in America is they're over the top. Like the entertainment wow factor is just on a whole nother level. And so when I watch games on like Rugby Network and you watch their advertisements that are based around rugby, I'm like, like it blows my mind. So there's definitely an appetite, there's definitely potential with how they play sport, grow sport, it's the entertainment factor. So there's definitely massive room, and I think it's only just going to continue to grow with the MLR, and like you were saying, with World Cup coming in sort of 10 or less than 10 years away.
Are you going to try get any of the US lads over to New Zealand? Try get them in playing for an NPC team. You can try hype them up and get them over that way of the world.
Bro, it's been chat, and that's the thing. Like, the excitement and the eagerness for them to like kick on after MLR and think about how they can improve and grow as players and where that's going to happen. I've definitely chucked out to them to explore coming to New Zealand. Not that I'm a player agent, but I guess New Zealand's a pretty small place. You know, someone that knows someone. And not even like NPC, it could be Heartland. I still rate that as a really competitive, great competition for guys to apply their trade. Obviously, like I'm a bit biased because I'd love, like I want Kiwis to grow Kiwis. Like that should be the first port of call is to grow our local players. But then, also be able to afford the opportunity for guys that want to come over, that are really keen, that'll, give 120% the opportunity as well. So, I've definitely chucked out the option for guys who want to continue and who are passionate about, excelling and improving the game to come over to NZ, play for East Coast, explore.
Love it. Being a New Zealander in America has its weird challenges. The one I always find, even with my wife, she's American, she doesn't understand what I say half the time. Have you had any kind of trouble with Americans getting what you're saying if you're in a Starbucks trying to get your name on a coffee cup or anything like that? Yeah, or have they got your New Zealand accent down?
Nah, bro, it's more like it's more the other way, like me trying to understand the American accent. Like, I don't know, when I'm speaking, I'm like, in my head, I'm just like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. Like I'm, eloquently, articulating what's going on in my mind, which is probably the complete opposite to what people are hearing. But no, it's probably the American accent, bro. And I actually love like the African Americans, like that real like hip hop, like I don't know, probably not gangster slang, but like when you watch movies or you watch TV shows and you're like, far out, I feel like I'm in a movie. Like when you hear guys speak. So I try and encourage or just ask questions just so I can like buzz out at guys at their accents. Like, it's quite a hard case.
That's awesome. Have you been in touch with any other All Blacks or ex-All Blacks back home and sort of selling them on coming to America now as well?
No, haven't been part of the recruiting process. I think Andy Ellis has been talking to a lot of guys, and I know Rick Sletso. I think just with me and Waisake coming over, I think that sort of created a bit of interest, and guys are like, oh yeah, far out, must be a pretty cool place to go to, and the rugby's all good as well. So no, I haven't, me personally, I haven't had any sort of chats with anyone just yet. Hopefully we can lift the trophy on the weekend, and that can sort of entice people to get a bit more excited about potentially coming over.
The other thing I was going to ask you about.
You guys got to make sure you don't break the trophy though if you win it, because Simon shared that footage the other day of the trophy being lifted and then just falling to bits. So I'm all for you guys winning the trophy, but just be a little careful with it.
Yeah, well, I think it's I'd hope it stays in one piece, because I think it's a shield.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so touch wood. We're able to win it, and then there'll be some very stern questions asked if we were to break That's sort of a shield. I don't even want to
Don't
think about it. Yeah.
Don't want to know what's going on to get to that point.
Nah.
But about NFL, like or sort of like fringe NFL or college football guys coming to be. But another question I wanted to ask is like, are there any guys that you've played with in rugby that you think would be able to go to the NFL potentially, or not necessarily to the NFL, but be good football players in America?
I haven't played against them or with them, but yeah, immediately pops in my head is RTS Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. I'm thinking of him as like a running back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, surely big props would go as linesmen. Well, they might be small compared to the linesmen.
We always Anonu would have been a good running back as well, because he was pretty strong and had pretty good agility as well.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, he'd be another one, I reckon.
Good yardage.
Trying to think if there's anyone quick enough to be like a wide receiver. It's quite a hard case. Like a lot of the guys like TJ and Reeves, that always practice like running routes against each other, like after trainings. From what I remember seeing. Yeah. Trying to think of someone quick enough to be. Yeah, I'll probably just go similar builds that could play running back. I don't know if we'd have that out and out pace like they do. But bro, the other thing, sorry to keep yarning, but the local field that we train at, there's always like young guys that are like doing agility. There must be footballers far out and blown away by like how they can move, just the cutting, change of direction. I used to rate my sidestep back in the day, but these guys would, just leave me for dust. And like, there's probably like 10 of them that, are just freakish. And I would imagine there's probably another million around the country that are all really similar.
I've always liked the idea in my head as well of Sonny Bill Williams playing tight end. I always thought that would kind of be good. But back to, I guess, rugby in the final coming up on Saturday. Are you nervous about playing at Red Bull Arena? Like, what's going through your head as you kind of prepare for the game on Saturday and the pressure that comes with a final?
To be honest, bro, I probably would have been more nervous if we were playing in Hoboken at JFK. I don't know if you've seen the state of the field, and that probably speaks to the record, New York's home record, being, below average. I think we've lost, our away record is by far better than our home record. So the fact we were able to change and pull some strings and then get the sign off to play at Red Bull, I'm stoked. I think it's closer to a proper regulation size rugby field, which helps. But I wouldn't say I'm too nervous, sort of juggling a few things around, excited about getting home next week, packing, waiting for the last minute shopping list from the wife to come through to get a few things. So I'll make sure that's probably right up there with preparing for the game, make sure I don't forget anything. But I guess, night before the game, bro, I'll start probably, mulling over a few things in terms of the game on Saturday. And then I guess usually hits me once we arrive at the stadium. The butterflies start fluttering around and start getting pretty fizzed.
Yeah, nice. Now you mentioned your handy sidestep, which is pretty famous. We have a segment on here that we normally do, which is like a Mt Rushmore. It's US sport related. But if we were to do if I was to kind of get you on the spot here to do a bit of a Mt Rushmore for sidesteppers in history and all rugby, so it can be sevens, union, and league. Touch rugby, there's probably some incredible steppers as well, but they might not be as well known. But if you were to kind of rattle off even just some guys that you might consider in the mix for a sort of Mt Rushmore for sidesteppers, who would you sort of have in mind?
Bro, the GOAT, the king would be Benji Marshall. Like
Yeah.
back when we used to have the VHS like tape cassettes, that's
Yeah.
that's what I was pushing record on his games and rewinding it back. Put Benji, Sean Johnson, another one, Kalen Ponga.
And they're both similar to you. They're both kind of got the touch background, right? So that speaks volumes to growing up with touch footy, and probably says a lot about what America could do with the rugby, is getting sort of touch footy to be a big part of, because it's that skill set that I think New Zealand rugby players, especially in the backs, kind of have a lot more than maybe other nations.
Yeah. Like a lot of my my sidestepping craft was honed by just trying to get away from my older brother. I was quite cheeky, and so I think Benji Marshall used to say that he was a bit of a cheeky fellow as well. So I think as well as stepping people on the touch field, it's probably trying to sidestep getting beaten up from our older cousins and brothers and whatnot. So bro, I can't sort of speak highly enough, like the skills and probably just game awareness as well. Like you look at sort of Sean Johnson, Benji Marshall, Kalen Ponga, like their footwork's electric, but their ability to be able to sort of read what defenders are doing and throw those cutout passes, put other people into space. Like you look at Kalen Ponga, even though I'm New South Wales Blues through and through, that cutout pass he threw in that game one, that's sort of, you see guys on the touch field doing that about 5 times a game. So as well as the footwork, it's just that spatial awareness, being able to pick the right people to, I guess, put into space, and the catch pass skill set as well that you have to hone and touch definitely transfers big time into rugby and league.
Yeah.
Do I need one more? I don't even know how many is on that Rushmore.
That's 3. You can have yourself though, but that's 3.
You got to back yourself. You got to back yourself.
Nah. I'll go. So Benji, who was Sean Johnson, Kalen Ponga. Is it weird that I go Roger Tuivasa-Sheck as well when all of them are league players? Or
Well,
Roger's just recently converted, but
harsh on Christian Cullen, but it's a pretty good list nonetheless.
Yeah, well, geez, probably uppercut myself when I get off for missing out.
But those are all guys. Yeah. I think it's I mean, at the end of the day, I think there's that transferability with league. I think all those guys that are so good on their feet, and then you're in that mix as well.
I've got a question. Obviously, the birth of your daughter happened. That's going to be like your number one achievement that you're like super proudest of, and you and your partner. But what else is up there for you? And is there anything else that you want to achieve over the next kind of? You got it all. You're happy.
It'll hopefully be the birth of our next child. But
nice.
It doesn't even come close. But I guess when you're putting into context and like, I don't know, sporting achievements, because that's what it is. Like rugby is just the sport, just the game. Trophies and medals and stuff come and go, but that's not to, I guess, downplay how great those are. Like World Cup back in 2015, All Blacks debut, but actually playing for East Coast last year, Ngāti Porou East Coast, the Queen's birthday, the 100th Jubilee celebrations, just because that's where I'm from. Like it's all well and good putting on, All Blacks shoes representing your country and that, but like East Coast, that's my family, grew up there. I spent a lot of my childhood up there. My great grandparents, that's where I sort of fuck up back to. So that, I'll sit that right up alongside, World Cup wins. But the birth of our baby girl, that's, not even, stratosphere, like not even in the same universe, bro.
Doesn't come close. Hey, we'll probably wrap it up there. We've taken up half an hour of your time, which I think is more than we sold you on when we asked you to come on here. So we really appreciate you hanging around and having a chat with us, mate. And best of luck for the final. A couple of us will be there at Red Bull Arena. So hopefully it's a good afternoon.
No, I appreciate it, lads. And yeah, my apologies around the timing. I tend to waffle on a little bit. So yeah, it's probably my bad for.
No, people want to listen to you more than us, mate. So it's no problem
James, you look like you're excited to get inside, bro. So I don't want to keep you too much longer.
Honestly, I'm just sweating it out in this backseat of the car. It's been great though. You don't
not
waffle.
Helping your if they're sweating it out.
I waffle. Yeah, exactly. I waffle. Dave waffles. So we loved having you on. All the best for Saturday, mate. I was having a look again on the subreddit for Major League Rugby, and there was a lot of fans back in New York to win 21-20. So I'll be shouting you all on from Colorado.
No, appreciate it, lads. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Keep up the awesome work, and yeah, look forward to catching up soon.
Yeah, pretty awesome to hear from Nehe Milner-Skudder there, and obviously it's going to be pretty cool to watch them in the final of Major League Rugby. It's a pretty big time for rugby in America with the World Cup coming, as we talked about, in 9 years or so, and the finals at Red Bull Arena out in Jersey. So they've upgraded their venue for the final, which is pretty cool. It's where the New York Red Bulls play in Major League Soccer. So hopefully there's a big turnout on the weekend. But moving on from rugby back to basketball, which we touched on in the intro, talking about the finals and focusing in on Golden State here. Last 8 seasons, 6 trips to the finals, 4 championships. This most recent one, is it the best one out of those 4 with the Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green core? What do you think?
I think it's the best one for. I think there's a little bit of The short answer is probably. I think the fact that Klay Thompson was out for 900 plus days with his horrific set of injuries. I feel like Steph Curry getting his first finals MVP, and just the team that they went there and did it. Like, full credit to that front office at Golden State. Incredible. They're drafting well. They're holding on to their core team. They're making the right decisions. So yeah, I mean, it's got to feel good. That's 4 rings. The weird conversations are already starting in some weird media circles about comparing Steph Curry to LeBron, which is a little hilarious because they now have the same amount of rings. But that Warriors team, like, their legacy solidified. I think if anything, it's got to feel good. A lot of pressure, obviously, on what they do in the off season, because I think Wiggins has obviously got his ring now, but I think they're not going to be able to afford to keep him, obviously, just because they're already well over the cap. They're probably going to need to re-sign Poole. So it's going to be an interesting off season for them, but that 4th ring has got to feel sweet.
Yeah. I agree. I was sort of thinking about this. I was looking at, because you're talking about the 4 titles, right, that they've won in the last, was it 8 seasons?
Yeah.
I think this has to be their best one, because it's probably, I mean, some of those, the ones with Kevin Durant, they would have just been expected to win. They would have been favourites. I think when Durant joined, that was after their 73-9 season, right? And then they lost the finals. So they've just gone 73-9 and just got better by adding probably the best player, one of the top 3 players in the league. So those next 2
73-9 season, though, they lost to the Cavs.
Oh, no, I'm saying that they lost. I'm saying that they had that season. Yes, they tripped up in the best of 7 just, but I'm saying that they then added Durant, which just is crazy when you think of that. So that those 2 rings there, I'm not going to put them anywhere near the best of their titles, just because they were just, if they didn't win, that's a disaster. So I think you nailed on the head with the Klay Thompson coming back from injury, not knowing much about that. I don't think the Warriors at the start of the season, yes, people knew they'd be good. I think I saw a stat. I think they're the 2nd team in all of American sports history to come last in the league and win the league within like a 3-year span or something like that. Some weird crazy stat like that. So again, that shows you, I mean, obviously when they came last, it was through a lot of injuries and issues.
It's injury. So I think there needs to be a massive asterisk put on that.
Yeah,
because when you have Green, depleted. Curry, and Thompson all out, but who are part of your core team, but they're out on injury, like.
Yeah, true. But anyway, it's still, It's still a pretty crazy like roller coaster when you go, and obviously a couple of years prior to that, the first, won it, come last, win it, all within a sort of 5-year span. It's pretty crazy. But I just think it's, for them to have won it, I think it's this season. I think it's their sort of best achievement of the 4.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're right. When you hear, in 30 years' time that a team went to 6 final series in 8 years, you wouldn't think that one of the 2 down years was the last place to finish in the NBA. But I think for sure it's the best title of these 4. I think, this is an aging core. I think, as Thwaites talked about, like the management of the Warriors deserves huge credit for, bringing in Andrew Wiggins, bringing in Poole, and getting a lot out of these fringe guys, because I mean, Curry's obviously incredible, but Klay Thompson is not the Klay Thompson of old these days. Neither is Draymond Green. I think they're both still very good, but for them to really dig deep and get this championship, I think is super impressive. You've got to remember they were, was it 7 or 8 games behind the Grizzlies in 3rd place in the Western Conference in the regular season, and throughout the final series, they certainly built up, but they were no dominant force, and I think as well in the final series, halfway through that series, the Celtics looked like the team to beat and looked like the overwhelming favourites. For them to dig deep again and find another championship is pretty impressive. I'm not sure how many more there's going to be though for this Warriors team, because I think a year older for some of these vets, and some tough decisions around Wiggins, etc. It's going to make this hard to keep being at the top. And there's other Western teams as well that are on the rise, like Mavericks.
I do think though that, like, I mean, obviously like an aging team's always hard, but again, like, even if you do shift Wiggins, you do get some kind of, you probably get draft picks back or something like that, because you've got to free up cap space. But then suddenly you're loaded with draft picks. You've got Poole, who's probably starting. You've got Wiseman, who's been injured. It just seems like the way that their front office operates, this is not going to be a team that we can write off in the next 4 or 5
Oh,
years.
no, I'm certainly not writing them off, but I think this Western Conference has potential to be quite strong. And I think it's going to be tough, when the Grizzlies are going to be even better. Mavs will be better. The Suns should still be a solid team. Portland's going to be better. I think it's going to be, they'll be up there, but it's going to be tough I think it's going to get harder and harder for them to win rings again.
Yeah, but with Wiseman, like, he was there, I think he was number 2 pick right after there, obviously, when they came last. So, and he didn't play at all this year. So, like, as folks are saying, like that, you've got a guy who didn't even feature this year, or certainly not in the sort of back end, and we still don't know a lot about, but he could be a superstar, And so, like, and if they get some more draft picks for, say, Wiggins, Curry and Thompson will still they've still got some life left in them, particularly Curry. I think you were saying, like, I guess probably sort of saying the same thing. Simon, you're saying that are they going to necessarily be true getting, winning any more titles? Maybe not, but I think they'll certainly be contenders for years to come.
Shit, yeah, their young core is great. I mean, you got Looney as well sitting in the background, who realistically, like, if you could do one bet, like if I could do one bet right now on a stat line for next season, it would be Looney being the offensive rebound leader in the NBA. I reckon he's absolutely going to have a monster year next year.
Probably between him and Adams.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Adams, but whether he stays on that team or not. But we'll see.
Speaking of staying on a team, let's go local and talk the Brooklyn Nets. Big story breaking this week about Kyrie Irving potentially leaving the Nets. It sounds like talks between him and the Nets and I think it was called an impasse. So Kyrie's got a player option for this year. He's expected to probably opt out of that and then sign some sort of monster deal. And the assumption was that would be with the Nets, but Kyrie being Kyrie, nothing's quite as easy as it seems. And now there's talk that maybe he's open to testing the market or looking for a sign and trade. The Knicks, the Lakers, the Clippers are all the teams being rumoured. For me, I think Kyrie is still staying with the Nets. I think for sure he's going to sign a contract extension. But what do you guys make of this, and what do you see as the way forward here?
This is, I think it's a French film, Force Majeure, where this family goes away on a skiing trip, and they're sitting there having breakfast one day, and there's just this avalanche screaming down the hill, and the wife is saying, should we get out of the way? And the husband's saying, no, let's just keep watching, kind of thing. And then it eventually hits her. But this is what this Nets team feels like to me. Every time I have hope and I'm excited to watch it, it just gets absolutely, like, my hope gets absolutely steamrolled over and over again. This, if Kyrie walks, it will be an absolute disaster, and the Nets will be, rightfully so, an absolute laughingstock in the NBA. There is no win situation for that. I don't think he goes to the Knicks. The Knicks don't have the cap space for it. The Lakers have even less cap space. Do the Nets trade for Westbrook? Absolutely not. And his aging contract. The Clippers, I don't see the Clippers probably doing it either, so I'm going to write off all those teams. I'm hoping this is just contract talk. Fingers crossed it is.
Well, it sounds like,
honestly, like, looking at Kyrie Irving, I like what the Nets are doing. They're, like, not giving into his bullshit. Kyrie Irving is a fantastic basketball player. Absolutely masterful in the way he is with the ball on the court. It is the bullshit that comes off the court and the fact that he's injury prone. Out of his entire NBA career, he's been injured for 30% of it, and out of his entire Nets career, he's been injured or not playing for 50% of it. So Sean Marks and the Nets organization basically saying, like, hey, we'll give you a guaranteed contract, but it's only for a certain number of years, or, like, you know, it has, I think, basically with games played, you can only put in, like, it accounts for 15% of your maximum contract at the moment. It's obviously going to be renegotiated when they do the bargaining agreement soon, but there's only so much they can do. And I like the fact that they're standing up to him. I don't know if either of you saw this. There was that article that came out that at Nets practice facilities, Steve Nash would practice with all the Nets. Kyrie Irving would not practice with Steve Nash, and he would hold his own practice after Steve Nash finished his practice. So he'd just, like, be like, hey, like, do you other players want to come with me? I'm going to do my own practice. There is a lot of bullshit that comes with Kyrie Irving. So if he does walk, it really sucks and it's a disaster, but it's probably the right move from the organization, like, just backing themselves and you know, basically saying we're the boss in this situation, not you.
Yeah, it's the right move for him to leave.
Not the right move for him to leave, but the right move to stand up. And, you know, if it does result in him eventually leaving because, you know, we have to do a sign and trade because he's like, I'm not staying here, whatever, it's probably more damaging to Kyrie. Like, we'll get a bunch of stuff back. The Nets are a better team with Kyrie Irving. I don't want him to walk. But what's the flip side to that? That we get Kyrie guaranteed for 5 years at this max deal, and he's still doing the same bullshit. He's not being a team player.
I think the organization's kind of made their bet on it, though, and I think I don't know what the sign and trade thing's interesting because I don't know what they would be able to get that's really valuable that's going to allow them to be in a position to win with KD's prime, even in a sign and trade, and certainly not if he just walks in free agency.
Yeah, but him walking in free agency, what Kyrie in my head seems to want is, one, recognition that he's an amazing basketball player. Him being snubbed from the NBA 75 obviously fucked him off a lot. 2, he wants to be paid like one of the top basketball players. So the Nets do have a bit of power where if he wants to be paid top money, he has to do a sign and trade. So him walking's like, obviously gets less money. So I think, like, the Nets do have a bit of power in there. But again, like you said, like, what do the Nets get back, and who are the teams that can realistically trade? Because if it is the Knicks, like, they're not going to give up RJ Barrett. If it's the Lakers, they're not going to give up Anthony Davis or LeBron James. So it's like
Correct.
you got Westbrook, and then you got a whole bunch of supporting cast from all the other teams.
With the
Clippers aren't giving up
Paul
Paul George,
George?
and they're not giving up
Paul George
No.
and Kawhi. No,
absolutely untouchable. Paul George and Kawhi absolutely off the
That's
table.
the thing.
Kyle.
And
They're
think
requiring Kyrie to go with those guys and put them over the top. And so,
Correct.
I mean, and so I do think you're right. I do think the Nets have some leverage there, and they know that Kyrie's best pathway to earning shitloads of money and competing for a championship is in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Because he's not, the teams with cap space are Indiana and Orlando, and he's not going there.
We've also spoken about
His
before,
attitude, before you go into this, Dave, his attitude is fucking awful, though. The fact that, he sat with the Cavs and was basically like, I'm not leaving. I'm here. I'm your guy. And then literally months later, turns around and goes to Boston. He's on the court in Boston. I'm not leaving. I'm re-signing. I'm coming back. Saying that to fans. He's saying it in interviews. And then goes to Brooklyn. And then in Brooklyn, he's just done the same thing where he's like, I'm not leaving 7 behind. I'm here. We're winning a championship. And he's potentially doing it again. That's 3 times. This has got to be damaging for this guy's image.
A lot of this is this could be just smoke and mirrors. So I don't, as you pointed out, a lot of the landing spots are probably not really realistic. I think the big thing as well, we've spoken about this previously, is a part that KD plays in this. So obviously when they moved to Brooklyn, right, there would have been conversations that we are not privy to that would have been had about, let's bring the band together and let's go for a title in Brooklyn. And, their relationship and how well KD and Kyrie get on is probably plays a part as well in terms of making sure that, Kyrie does stay. If that's the decision,
Yeah, but you bring that is a absolutely fantastic point, Dave. Because if the organization is potentially going to let Kyrie walk or do a sign and trade, KD's okayed it, which is the interesting part of that. There's no scenario where KD is not playing some,
facilitator
form of thing, and so you're absolutely right. It's going to be interesting. So if Kyrie does go, it's because KD's okay with it. Maybe KD's sick of his bullshit as well at this point and just wants to get on and play some basketball.
The one thing is, you're saying that there's always this sort of off-field thing with Kyrie, but the main one that obviously was causing the big problems last season with the continuity of the team was COVID. Now that should not be a problem going forward. So, at least they can kind of, and that probably is what you're thinking as a Brooklyn, as Sean Marks or Nash, that's what's kind of really stopped the momentum and caused the problems. It meant we finished 7th and had to play a red hot Celtics when if he was available all season, we probably would have been top 4. So I think, and would have had more, continuity of the same sort of lineup. So I think, that's not going to be a factor in the coming season, which helps as well.
Are we all on board that we think probably he's still going to stay? That's what I'm thinking. I think he's still staying in Brooklyn.
I knew you were going to ask this question. I was having flashbacks to when we were all sitting at your place, Si, recording the podcast, talking about James Harden. We were like, 80-90%, he stays. I want him to stay. I do want him to stay, but at the same time, I think there needs to be some rules put down for the guy, because that's why KD's there, right? That's why a whole bunch of all the other guys are there to win a championship. I hope he stays. I think he stays. This feels like contract negotiation stuff.
Also,
Dave, what do you think?
Sorry, just to jump in just quickly. If you're the owner of the Nets, you're forking out huge money. You're paying massive luxury tax bills. You want these guys playing and being fully committed. So I can see there's probably some messages from ownership coming in as well.
Yeah, and I think from memory as well, Joe Tsai and his wife, they're both pretty close to Kyrie. They have a lot of chats about charitable foundations and things like that. So there feels like there's a bit of relationship there. Maybe they can lean on. So I don't know. I hope he stays. I think he stays.
I think he stays.
There it is. 3 stays. Watch him get traded in 4 days. Or AD
playing out his days in Minnesota.
Yeah, I would kind of laugh if they were like the ultimate fuck you, and they found a way to trade him to Orlando or something.
Trade him to Toronto so he can't get into the country and can
I'd be happy if they traded him to Memphis and we got Ja Morant. I'll take that.
Cameron would be nice. It all should get shaken out pretty soon, though, with the drafts coming up, and then the player options get decided not long after that. So over the
June
next
29th.
week or two, we should be, and then free agency opens, I think, 1st of July or something. So all of this will play out. NBA free agency always happens very quickly, so it'll all play out very, very fast. Moving away from basketball, though, and moving into the ice hockey, Thwaites, you're in Denver, where the Avalanche are now just 2-1 up after the Lightning came back and had a pretty emphatic Game 3 win to really change things a little bit. I know we were planning to ask, is there any way back for the Lightning in this series, was going to be the question for this topic, but I think it's pretty clear there's a way back for the Lightning after that game last night. So are you a little bit more nervous about this series than you were when they were up 2-0?
No. Just the arrogance and the confidence now that I'm breathing that mountain air. I'm at elevation. No, I'm not worried at all. I think one of the things, so game 2 where the Avs won 7-0, it was obviously in Denver at Ball Arena. They played lights out. The big question mark that came out of that for the Avs, though, was Darcy Kemper, their goaltender. How he wasn't really challenged the entire game, and how would he do in a game, because in a competitive game, because previously they had Francois as their goaltender in the last couple of series, who was just absolutely lights out. They pulled Darcy Kemper, I think, in the second period last night, or third period. Honestly, if there's any change that they're going to make, it's going to be to the goaltender. I still think Avs probably walk out of this. I'm still hoping for that 4-1, maybe 5-1, but I just don't think the Lightning can keep up with the Avalanche's speed on the ice. It's absolutely incredible. There were jokes going around yesterday that they were going to open the doors and, the humidity was going to affect the ice, and they were going to melt the ice down a little bit to try to slow the Avs down. It obviously affects the Lightning as well, but I just don't think so. I just think the Avs are absolutely on another level. Cale Makar has just been absolutely lights out. So I think they split the series in Tampa. They go back into Denver on Friday after winning Wednesday's game, and close it out 4-1.
I think the main concern, I think we kind of have talked about how the Avs have been the favourites and been quite clearly the most dominant team in the playoffs, but Tampa, the fact that they've won the last 2 years, that's what makes him, without me knowing huge about it, but just know enough about sport, that makes him dangerous proposition. And they came back from 2-0 down against the Rangers. And the fact that they came from a 7-0, shellacking, probably the biggest Stanley Cup final, single game loss in history, back to then pretty much flip the script and make it a 6-2 win. That kind of tells me that it's definitely sort of series on. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 2-2, and then really it comes down to sort of that game 6 becomes huge at that point. But yeah, certainly want the Avs to win. That'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, it feels like in this series, normally game 5 and 7-game series feels like the pivotal game. In this series, it feels like game 4 is going to be it. And like you said, Dave, if it turns around and the Tampa Bay get that home win and it goes back 2-2, it's probably going 6 or 7. If they drop it, I think it'll be over and done with pretty fast.
Yeah. Oh yeah, big game Wednesday night down there in Tampa. That will be should shape how things shake out. Well, to wrap things up, Mt Rushmore this week. We had a big think about this and settled on individual rivalries in American sport. So think your, Federer and Nadal would be a good global one, but we're thinking just America. So individual rivalries. What leaps out? And we'll settle on 4.
So just to clarify, when we mean individual, we mean just sporting rivalries, so it can be team sports, right?
Or are we doing
individual?
Individuals within teams as well. So Brady against Manning or something like that is fine. Yeah.
I think I'm gonna go a little bit outside the box with this. And while these two never played against each other, Jordan and LeBron.
You dick. That was.
This was your one that I
suggested that 2 days ago, and you've just come.
I suggested that. I'm going to go through it.
You did not.
I'm going to go through and pull receipts. I'm pulling receipts right now.
Pull receipts and put it on the screen. That was my suggestion from the group chat for sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm being sold away here because.
And he's sold it up
if we're talking basketball. If we're talking basketball, I think you'd have to go Larry Bird, Magic Johnson over those two.
That defined the Celtics.
This mountain air and the elevation got me all confused. God damn it! So you did suggest it.
That looks like LeBron, Jordan. That's right there.
I can't see it. The internet's too patchy out here. God damn it!
Took my idea and then sold it off his own. But yeah, I would say that Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. I mean, that the Celtics Lakers. If you're doing a team rivalry, that's going to be right up there. And I think those two players sort of defined that rivalry.
And even watching that series that HBO released, the way that they kind of dramatize it was like NBA was dying in the sort of late 70s. Like it was really struggling to kind of pick up, sponsorships and viewership, and they had to do something. Jerry Buss comes in, buys the Lakers, picks Magic the number one. Celtics had Larry Bird the year before, I think. And it's on the back of that rivalry, and it became even like a black versus white thing, Boston, like it was all kind of built up, but it was like, it really revitalized the NBA. And on the back of that then came around Jordan, and then it kind of went lights out from there, but it was Larry and Magic, which was kind of the catalyst for that.
I think Larry Magic is a really good one. I was thinking about tennis. I was thinking about the Williams sisters potentially, but I know you guys had another option there, or Navratilova against Chris Evert.
Yeah, but I think looking at that, I was looking into a bit more detail. So Navratilova is from Czech Republic, and she sort of like denounced her citizenship when she was like 18, moved to America. So I think I think they both won 18 Grand Slams. Like they were pretty much, one of them two were number one for like 10 years. So, and
it was really even. I looked up their record. It was like 43-37 in favor of one of them. So very
incredible rivalry. But I think we could probably Navratilova is more Czechoslovakian than she is American, arguably.
No, she played under the flag. It works. She played under the US flag. I think that has got to be one of the biggest rivalries, especially in tennis as well. Like it's kind of a rarity where you kind of get, exactly like Sai said, two people on such an elite world-class level that are both playing at like fairly similar levels at the same time, and it makes for some great sport. That was up there for me. And I think, to be honest, and I'm not saying Serena is a bad sports person, because Serena is, if you told me GOATs of, greatest of all times of sport, I'm putting Serena up on that my Mt Rushmore instantly. That is the absolute lock. But when we're talking about rivalries, I feel like that rivalry was a bit better for me than obviously like Serena and Venus.
Well, I think
Serena was a lot better than Venus.
I think it's probably more recency thing. I think like Venus being a bit older, like I think Serena probably really dominated the last let's say it's a 15-year kind of rivalry. Probably the last sort of half of that, Serena was just dominant. But I think if you really just focus on like the early 2000s, they were playing each other in the finals, what seemed to be like every Grand Slam. They were winning the doubles every Grand Slam. And it wasn't just Serena winning them, like it was a bit more even back then. So I think, and at that time, the one thing that probably adds to their putting them on the Mt Rushmore is the fact that they kind of transcended the sport. They made women's tennis like that much more must-watch television than it probably had been previously. It probably played a big part into the women's tennis players getting the same pay as men, which, that's sort of world leading when it comes to sports. And, there's probably players like Coco Gauff now that is playing tennis because of the Williams sisters. and you've even, you've got Sloane Stephens, Madison Keys, so there's sort of African American and Hispanic sort of minorities, I guess, within America and Central America. The Williams sisters are probably a big part of why you're seeing players like that come through. So that's definitely a big plus for them and their rivalry. But yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll have both. I think we got to decide on one. You obviously have Sampras and Agassi as well in the men's side.
Sampras and Agassi, Sampras and Agassi was cool at the time, but it's not on the same level as either of those other ones that we were just talking about.
I agree. I think Sampras was. What was cool about it was the bad boy Agassi with the long hair versus the all-American Sampras, who was like the goody-good. So that kind of had, as you say, it was entertaining at the time, but probably not, as you look back, as good.
How about this? So the Williams sisters, 2000 Wimbledon made it in the semi-finals, 2001 US Open final, 2002 Roland Garros final, 2002 Wimbledon final, 2002 US Open final, 2003 Australian Open final, 2003 Wimbledon final.
I think the record was five Grand Slams in a row, which is like never been done before.
And Serena won them all, I think, and Serena leads the head-to-head 1912. So there's a lot fewer matches they played against each other than Navratilova and Evert, but I mean, I don't know. I certainly remember the Williams,
hands down. And this is the hard thing. Like, we went in the generation that grew up and could watch Chris Evert and Navratilova go against each other. But we were in the generation that could watch the Williams sisters play each other, play some incredible tennis, and get behind it. But for me, it's the earlier
and give it to Navratilova. So if we settle on that, who else we got? I quite liked my Jordan LeBron one, because I think in the last 10 years that's really been the big debate in American sports: is LeBron the GOAT, or is it Jordan still? And when the NBA 75 comes out, people are wondering who's going to be higher. And
this is the interesting thing, though, I think, with this debate, though, is if we're going for rivalries or we're going for GOAT debates. Because if you're going for rivalries, maybe you kind of invalidate that. But if you're going for who is the GOAT out of those two, and GOAT debate, kind of Mt Rushmore, I think that LeBron Jordan rivalries up there. And to be honest, though, if we're comparing it to where they both are at this point in the career, I'm giving it to Jordan. Not just on the fact of rings, but he owns a sports team now. LeBron will eventually own a Vegas sports team, but if we're looking at all facets of rivalries at the moment, it's Jordan for me.
Both billionaires. But I like the Johnson Bird shout. I think is
so do I.
My basketball one.
Yeah, that felt like a true rivalry. They were constantly going at each other. There was all those finals runs. There's histories between the teams. There was obviously a lot of, going to Boston and playing any sport, I think comes with its own challenges. So, the fact that Magic Johnson went in there with that Lakers team and did what they did and against that Larry Bird team. And yeah, I think
it's unique as well, because the rivalry started at college level, where they faced each other in the national championship, which that's hugely rare. Where not only that, so they had that, when and it took a couple of years in the NBA for them to actually face each other in the finals. But that was kind of, everyone was waiting for that. It was the rematch, So
it was a perfect storm, really. You meet in the college final, then get drafted onto two of the biggest franchises in the NBA.
Yeah. And I think in that college year, I'm pretty sure Larry Bird's Indiana were unbeaten and lost. Only game they lost was to Magic in that final. So crazy. But another one, when you're thinking individual rivalries, would be Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier.
Sure.
Mainly because with boxing, when everyone, it's kind of like the Jordan, they actually fought each other, but like the Jordan LeBron thing, where when anyone sort of looks at current boxing fight, like rivalries or kind of, sets of fights, it's always kind of compared to those, back to that. So they had, the 3-fight trilogy, which is kind of what you want in boxing, best of 3, went 2-1, and it's kind of always probably seen as the pinnacle of heavyweight boxing, which at the end of the day, heavyweights is the pinnacle of all boxing. And in terms of when you look back, so I think, yeah, I'm definitely putting a vote for that one. The reason as well, when they first fought, this is some good stat chat. The first fight, they were both unbeaten, 26-0 and 31-0. They both held the heavyweight title, and in the case of Ali, he was a previous holder because of how he had that suspension. So it was a perfect storm of just two unbeaten fighters that, because of circumstances, were able to fight each other without having had a loss. So that created probably the most anticipated fight in history. Won by Frazier, and then the trilogy fight when it was 1-1 was the Thriller in Manila, which is probably then regarded as the greatest fight. So it's like, to me that's kind of huge. Obviously, we don't know as much, but we only sort of hear about it, and it's always talked about. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not much of a boxing fan, but I would agree. I think that is a rivalry that everyone knows about beyond boxing circles, and I think that's for sure on the top four.
The other thing is like one thing that I always found fascinating about that series, or just Joe Frazier versus Muhammad Ali in general, is just the difference between the two. Like, Ali was considerably taller, had a considerably longer reach. So, I think Joe Frazier is like 5'11" or something like that, and Ali was almost 6'4" or 6'3". So it's like in almost like seven inches more reach. So it was, that made it super exciting as well, because it's like they're both orthodox boxers, which is fine. And they're just kind of going at each other. But that Thriller in Manila, like you said, at that time, it sounds like it just would have been absolutely incredible. It's one of those like the world stops kind of moments.
As far as other one, your fourth and final, always the hardest one to settle on. Manning Brady, Woods Mickelson. Any others that stand out?
I kind of
Stephen Adams,
Woods,
Draymond Green.
Yeah, Stephen Adams is genitals versus Draymond Green's left foot. I don't know about Brady versus anyone. Brady against the NFL rules committee, maybe.
Yeah.
But I think Mickelson Woods is definitely up there for me. I think that's a great little rivalry. They're great head-to-head stats.
My only problem is I think Woods is too good. I think he dominated him too, especially in their primes. Like I think Woods dominated Mickelson. Mickelson had a lot of like bridesmaids, second or
how many times did he finish second? Yeah, it was so many.
Yeah, and so like if Tiger Woods didn't exist, Mickelson would be probably he'd be close to Nicholas. So I think that's my only beef with that rivalry is just, and it's probably why you sort of talk down the Williams sister rivalry, which is the fact that there's probably just one of the two is just too good or too dominant over the other.
Yeah, he finished. He's never won the US Open, but finished second 6 times. It's pretty tough.
And looking at their like head-to-head PGA Tour results, so they've gone against each other or encountered each other 38 times. Tiger Woods has shot better 19 of those times, Mickelson 15, and they've tied on 4 occasions.
But we're talking, at the end of the day, golf's about the majors. And Tiger dominated them.
So, Dave, if they're not on your list, who's rounding out your top 4?
So let's settle. So we've got Navratilova and Chris Evert.
Yep.
We've got Ali and Frazier.
Yep. And we got
potentially the 2 basketball ones if you want. It's I personally think definitely Larry and
Major for sure. Yeah. Are we circling back to another basketball one?
I don't think so. I think it's probably
there's Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer that I think you mentioned separately, but we probably can't speak as highly of it. I agree with you that the Brady Manning. I also don't know if I love the fact that it's quarterback doesn't really play the quarterback. You know what I mean? So
nah, I'm not buying that one. So I think probably one of the other ones that's like super, super random, but maybe not, is Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan. When we're talking about rivalries, you gotta talk about that, because the fact that their rivalry was so intense that Tonya Harding got her bodyguard to after Nancy Kerrigan was practicing, go up and whack her in the kneecap. It's got to be one of the most shocking moments in American sports as well, like in general. That's definitely obviously a huge huge rivalry to me. But
certainly
obviously
gets a mention. Certainly warrants a mention. Well, like whack the kneecap. So we meaning like proper broken bones in there, or like knocked her out of skating?
21-inch collapsible baton, smashed Kerrigan in the right leg, and yeah, it's just awful stuff. So I think it basically knocked her out of competition for a while. It's obviously, anyone that hasn't seen it, watch I, Tonya, the story on Tonya Harding. It's a great movie. Margot Robbie in it.
So I think, okay, that's good, quite niche. So okay, so we got to land on the fourth spot. I mean, the other one that we haven't mentioned yet would be, which we kind of may briefly touch on, is, like I said, I don't think Tiger versus Mickelson quite fits Rushmore. It wouldn't be far away. But another one would be Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus, who pretty much it was between them in the 60s. I think all the Grand Slams, they were and I think in the case of Palmer, he was the most popular player. Nicklaus was the most feared. He was the Tiger Woods of that generation. And so I think that would be one. Certainly, if you kind of look at ESPN rivalry sort of countdowns and things like that, I think that one always features as well.
Also interesting, I love that Arnold Palmer kind of goes down in American history anyway, which is pretty neat. Like, a lot of Americans obviously wanted to play golf like him. A lot of people around the world wanted to play golf like him, but lots of people wanted to model their life around him as well. And like outside of the US, I hadn't really heard about it, but in the US, the drink, the Arnold Palmer, is obviously like pretty famous as well. Half iced tea, half lemonade. And apparently just absolutely took off, because that's what he would drink after his games. He'd get his wife to do it. And because he was such like a just absolute powerhouse of a figure, and everyone wanted to be exactly like him, it just took off. So I'm like, here in Colorado, we went out for dinner last night. My father-in-law was just sitting in a restaurant ordering an Arnold Palmer. So I love that this is there, and I could just tell that Arnold Palmer story. And it's
definitely there's the alcoholic version, right? You can get spiked Arnold Palmer's, especially as a summer staple.
I had one 2 weeks ago with you, Dave.
We did. That was frozen.
They were very alcoholic as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, they so Nicklaus got 18 majors. Palmer got 7, I think, but their PGA wins are about the same, and Palmer's got a drink named after him, and Nicklaus doesn't. So it's pretty good rivalry overall. And as you say,
take that, Jack Nicklaus.
That's right. That's worth 10 majors at least. But yeah, I mean, those two in the 60s were the far and away the best two golfers around. And they're both names. Like everyone sort of heard of these two names. And I think they've both got very strong legacies.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting as well, because when we were talking about this, it was a little hard. I think in 10 years' time, it's going to be great to kind of like revisit this, or like think about it again when you're like, you got your Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen rivalry, like Dave, I think you mentioned.
He's stealing another one of my ideas.
Yeah, but no, it's true, because it's like,
it is, yeah.
They're both in the AFC. They're going to have to go up against each other for years and years to come. I mean, you've got your young tennis players coming through now. You've got all these other kind of like rivalries emerging, which is fantastic. So, it's only good. Rivalries make games great. It's like watching a Boston Red Sox and Yankees game. Like, they always go a little harder. So
using tennis, like, you're absolutely bang on. Like, I think men's tennis had like after Sampras Agassi were kind of at the twilight, and before the emergence of Federer and Nadal, and Djokovic came a bit later, there was like men's tennis really like struggled in the popularity, and I think that's when the Williams sisters were in their prime, and I think the women's tennis took off, and in terms of people wanting to watch, and I think that's on the back of having those strong rivalries. And then obviously men's tennis went bonkers when they got the big four, when you include Murray in that. But which is now kind of going through a rebuild themselves. So yeah, I think it's a sport especially that is driven by rivalries. And it certainly adds to any of the sports when you have them.
I feel like golf's crying out for something like that.
Well, now we've got the Live League. We've got Live versus PGA. It's fantastic.
Right.
There's a new rivalry.
We'll be away. All right, gents. I think we should wrap things up. Another wonderful episode. Thank you so much to Nehe Milner-Skudder for coming on. Absolute legend. Good luck in the final this weekend. And check us out on all the socials: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. 3 and 5 podcast. We'll talk next week.